And, and that's the thing. And Four Card's right. He could sign with LAG by tomorrow. And so we will pose this question to this particular gentleman as he gets all settled in and gassed up, ready to go. Niko Moreno, it is time for Thursdays with Niko. I salute you, my friend. How are you?
What's going on, John? Everyone, all your audience, excited to be here. It's been a long and busy week between World Cup qualifiers, MLS, in general. Even if there was a break, there were some games played. So getting ready for this week and the last third, the race to the finish in MLS. So excited to be here with some interesting stories to talk about as well.
Yeah, we'll get into that. We had a question to the floor. And, Thursday Thoughts, they kind of do this sometimes. Eden Hazard is debating retirement at the age of 32. And the question to the floor from our friend, the Airborne DJ, does somebody in Major League Soccer give Eden Hazard a shot? And our friend Four Card makes the point, if he's a free agent, which he is the starting left winger without Club FC, he can sign for LAG tomorrow. Does Eden Hazard make any sense to you in any way, in any club in Major League Soccer?
Yeah. Anytime that you have a guy with his profile, his trajectory, career, talent, you could say that there is a lot of teams in MLS that could use his talents. Now, that's just going off of what we know, going off of what we remember from the player. I think that regardless of who you are and what your name is important to evaluate where you are physically, medically, mentally. Are you bought in? Are you committed? Are you going to come over here and really work and be an asset, or are you not, right? But going off of just the paper and going off just what we know of the player, sure, a team like LAG, that there ain't enough hands to go around and help get water off that boat sinking, then yeah, sure, and they've had some new players that have come and helped, and even though to me he seems a little too late, it would definitely make sense. I think it makes sense for a ton of teams, even a team like San Jose that could use some help up top, so yeah, all in all, I get it. I understand it when players want to retire, and I always think that it's better when you retire up top, at the top of your game, where everybody remembers how great you were, and not when you begin to be like Lampard or Drogba when he was out here, and Andrea Pirlo, all those guys that maybe wish they could have some of those seasons back.
All right. We spent a lot of time this morning, and frankly, we've spent a lot of time over the last couple of days about what in the wide world of sports is going on in New England. From your perspective, and everybody there at Soccer Bar and Pulso Sports, what have been your thoughts / takeaways of the news dumpiest of news dumps, literally as New England is getting 2 points pulled away from them as Dane St. Clair gives an assist to Fragapane to take a 1-0 win and turn it into a 1-1 draw? When that is happening, you get that news dump that Bruce Arena is resigned. Then you have all of this stuff with Richie Williams. Then the assistants are gone. Kurt Onalfo says, that's what I did. Richie Williams is now being given time away. What have the discussions been like there on the West Coast this week about what's going on in New England?
The timing is odd, and the fact that it was Richie that brought it up, a guy that's been with Bruce Arenas his whole career, that has been around his behavior, attitude. The conversation we've had here with media members is it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, right? So guys like Bruce, guys like Siggy, Brian Smetzer, they act exactly the same around their people, around their circle. They have ways about them. So the interesting about this is that it just came to light, right? And that initially we thought it was going to be Richie that was going to be interim head coach. Sounds like the players, per the Athletic and other reports, didn't want to play for Richie. So everybody just wants clarity. Everybody wants transparency on what happened. We knew that Bruce was under investigation for some insensitive language or something to that nature. I had heard from people that it could be some homophobic comments. There could be all kinds of things. So we don't know exactly what happened, but the lack of transparency is the odd part and how everything's kind of playing out. You have a soccer team that's at the top of the East that has a good roster. So I think they're going to be the ones most affected. That now you don't have that leader. You always have players that die with coaches and they'll bleed for coaches. So who are going to be those players that are going to feel like they are being shafted because now your coach is gone, and how do you respond to that? So there's a lot of components. I heard from somebody that there was rumors about a non-disclosure agreement as well that apparently Bruce was having people sign. So there's just a lot going on. It seems like a movie that just keeps getting things added onto it. But at the end of the day, Bruce is someone that, like any guy with his career and age, sometimes might say things that no one has ever said. Hey, Bruce, you don't say that. And now it comes to light. Now it's an issue. He decides to part ways. He says it's good for the team and it's good for him. He's going to reflect on how everything transpired and he's going to grow from it. So we'll see. But all in all, it's been a very odd and long-winded divorce between Bruce and the Revolution.
No doubt. And despite all of this, they're second in the East with all of this noise going on around them. They are second in the Eastern Conference with all this. And they get to go to Colorado. They get to escape all the madness that's going on. I mean, you've got Boston television stations putting the Revs in their rundown before the New England Patriots. That's what is going on with this right now. And the best thing that could have happened is that you leave town and you're going up against the Wooden Spoon Contenders and the Rabid Prairie Dogs, and you get to escape this for a weekend in a game where you're an underdog right now, according to the juice boxes.
Yeah, I mean, they say there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? And unfortunately, we live in a society that loves drama, and the bigger the drama and the speculation and everything, it kind of puts your story at the top of any headline because of everything that's going on. But on the soccer side, we see a team with the Hill brothers that are playing excellent together. Vrioni starting to score some goals. That midfield starting to make some sense. They do drop points. Minnesota, credit to them by the way they end up finishing that game. Last resort, St. Clair's in there. Finally, somebody puts it in the back of the net. And it's being Fragapane, which ironically enough has his own issues with Mr. Adrian Heath. So he comes out of the doghouse and gets the equalizer for Minnesota. So all in all, Minnesota, New England Revolution deserves the credit and the headlines for other things. However, this story is trumping all everywhere. Even that other story that I'm sure we'll talk about a little later.
Yeah. You want to go ahead and talk about it now?
It's your show, baby. It's a weird one. It's a weird one. So, I do hope before we finish, I wish Bruce the best. Me and him had, as media members, I feel like Bruce got a little nicer over the years. I think when he was in LA, he was more abrasive, a little more smart remark. but he's a great coach. He's the face of U.S. soccer in so many ways, right? If there's a Mount Rushmore of U.S. soccer, he's definitely up there. So you got to appreciate what he's done for the game, and now he gets to move on, and I wish him the best.
Yep. So before we get into other stories and red light, yellow light, green light, and all the other stuff that we do this week, Rich Ransom, who watches, listens, and is a part of our discussions from Philly, he's a Philadelphia Union guy, and he asks, Seattle has the most local players. How do they do it?
I think that the premier programs and the youth academy for the Sounders, they have a really close relationship. So if you play for Park Northwest, if you play for Washington Premier, you just have a very close community when it comes to soccer. And Sounders Academy does a very good job at inviting all these players and making a very good pipeline for anyone who desires it and has the talent for it to have that opportunity. I think that Seattle, as a fan base and as a stadium, that it's a very family-oriented experience, allows for kids to grow up loving the game, loving the Sounders, and it really feeds this kid's dreams into not playing for any other team, but the Sounders to start off. So, yesterday talking to Stuart Hawkins, 17-year-old center back who gets signed by the Sounders, you could see it in his voice. There's pictures of him in the stadium when he was 8-9 years old. He told us that he started in an even smaller club than the ones I just mentioned in Harbor. And so it's interesting the way that kids just kind of play along and they all want to be together. Jackson Reagan had a similar story. Paul Rothrock, a similar story as well. It just seems to be, to me, that every player that begins their journey within the Seattle community has an end goal, and that end goal is to get to soccer academy for the Seattle Sounders and then fight their way through the Tacoma Defiance and then eventually into the first team for the Sounders. And you see it all over. Now, Seattle also has a very good philosophy of creating a sustainable resource of players coming in, homegrown players coming in, helping their team. And they show it to you, right? They show it with Ovid Vargas. They show it with Danny Leyva. They get playtime. Some of the careers go one way or another. Because I did ask yesterday, Brian Smetzer, if signing a kid this early at 17 years old, knowing that he's going to get no playtime, is that a double-edged sword? Because he creates expectations for minutes. It could make a player frustrated, like we're going to talk about here soon, of not getting enough playtime, because you do see it. I've seen it with really talented players here in Seattle that they become frustrated with not playing. But I think it's just the philosophy of the Seattle Sounders wanting to create local talent and having the Sounders be that platform.
And there are teams here in Major League Soccer that go about things different ways. You either, you want to sit there and drop $9 gazillion and turn it into Messi and friends. You have that option if you can navigate the cap. But once again, we've maintained in our conversations, and we've maintained on this network, you've got to boost the cap. You cannot have the $7.5 million cap number, which is slated for 2027, be your cap number next year. It's got to be more like the National Hockey League, where you've got a floor and you've got a ceiling, and that ceiling is $80 million. I mean, you've got to advance this along if you're going to continue to want to be that attractive location, especially as the world is coming here in 2026. Philadelphia does it one way. Seattle does it one way. You have Dallas does it, through the academy as well, but Dallas is learning to reinvest now as well. Seattle's spending money, but they're not, being ridiculous about it. They'll pick their spots. And so there are different ways of going about it. You have those grandes that want to drop the wallet and just sit there and go, throw the money up in the air like Cartman and bathe in it, But there are different ways to go about it, and Seattle has found their way.
Yeah, and it's balance. And I praise the organization for doing it, because the salary cap does obligate you to find ways for you to have good players, productive players at a smaller salary, and homegrown players are an excellent way to do that. But you got to have the right scouting team. You got to have the right pipeline, and you got to want to play these kids in various positions. And even when they don't come out of the academy, the scouting team does a great job at looking around, right? Christian Roldam out of UW, Alex Rodan out of Seattle U, Dylan Tevis out of UW. So they do a good job at looking at their area, looking at old soccer. They're not just focused and tunnel visioned into getting the next European player or getting the next Argentine prospect. They just do it differently. And they do add those pieces like the Loderos, like the Raul Ruidíaz's, the Albert Rusnacks, and they try to kind of work with that and just make it a cohesive team. And I think that's something that they do excellent. But yes, there are the success stories with LAFC, with the Galaxy. They do it a lot different, right? Let's go. Let's get the biggest start. Let's get the Javier Hernandez's, the Velas, the Garrett Bales, whatever we want to do. And we're going to try to win a ship. And that's just the way they do it. I think it's more sustainable. And I think it shows more organization when you do it the way Seattle does it.
All right, so in hour number one, we talked about an opening kickoff. We talked about a player for CF Montreal who was frustrated at the lack of playing time. So a buddy asked him to play in a pickup league. He played 3 games in a pickup league, got 6 points in one match of his 8. The 8 points in 3 matches, 6 of them in one match, and then only had 2 in the other 2. His buddy's team didn't make the playoffs. Then he goes and plays into another of his buddies' teams, leagues. And this team was in the playoffs and got so mad that he apparently, allegedly, according to French media, spit on an opponent and took a swing at somebody. That was Matko Miljevic. He's a frustrated dude apparently right now. Who's the frustrated dude that you had that you wanted to talk about? What was your weird?
It was him. I mean, I've seen frustrated players here in the past, not to that extent, but Han Walawana was a player that was here that was a young prospect. I think he came from UW as well. 1 minutes, kind of forced his way out of the club, ended up in Nashville. He gets in a trade in for Jimmy Medranda and a couple of other players. And then he goes over there and his career never goes nowhere because of that urgency, that frustration, that desire to go and try to be something somewhere else. Aaron Cover had a similar story. I feel like Danny Leyva has found moments and times where he's frustrated with not getting enough play time. Now he's in Colorado in loan, growing. Now these are players like someone like Danny. He's intelligent, he's bright, he knows how to do it, but that doesn't mean that he's not a human being and can't be frustrated. Now this is ridiculous. I mean, I've seen players get in trouble for playing pickup games, maybe an exhibition game, maybe there's a celebrity game, and they're like, hey, man, we got a game coming up. And I'm like, hey, I don't care. And they get into trouble for things. I see people get in trouble for maybe doing something completely different, man. Maybe riding bikes or ATVs and getting hurt while doing those things, snowboarding. But I've never heard of nobody just getting into a league with a fake name and trying to, I don't know, who are you lying to? I mean, who? And this is a prominent player. I mean, this is the youth Argentine and U.S. Youth national team type of talent, right? He, I believe he played in Argentinos Juniors. I had his youth with Boca Juniors. So he's a talented player that now is, I don't know if they're going to ban him completely or is it suspended. But at the end of the day, he's going to have some repercussions for trying to do what? Like, I don't get it, man.
World qualifying. We had stuff in the Euros. CONMEBOL was its standard amount of crazy. I was trying to explain to folks Argentina playing in Bolivia and playing at La Paz. And the running phrase that we have here is La Paz is not at sea level. And when you play at the stadium in La Paz, it's basically like going to Denver and then stacking Denver on top of Denver and then stacking probably the Space Needle on top of 2 Denvers. And that's your elevation that you're playing at when you're playing in La Paz. Is that close?
Absolutely. That is correct. And I've talked to players who have had the opportunity to play in Bolivia, and man, they just playing without oxygen, and they have literally oxygen tanks as you would in the NFL, which is a whole different type of uh, necessity. But here is because soccer players were used to going 90 minutes, they're completely out of breath. Man, I remember Radamel Falcao one time coming out of a 1-0 win against Colombia. He could barely get through the interview with the person that was talking to him because he couldn't catch his breath. So every time he would respond, they would put the oxygen mask on him, and then he'd go to the next question because that's how difficult it is to play in Bolivia. So that's one of the, I think, the beautiful things about CONMEBOL is that you can go play in Barranquilla, which is playing in an oven at 12 o'clock, with the sun beaming above you. And I like the fact that you can have your home field advantage and bring people and teams to play with your fans, but also everything that surrounds you and gives you an edge to just balance the field sometimes of teams like Brazil, like Argentina. Sometimes if it doesn't work, like we just saw Argentina still trample Bolivia. But at the same time, I think those things are pretty cool. Very particular of what happens in CONMEBOL.
El Tri, I was at the El Tri Uzbekistan match a couple days ago. And El Tri's got problems, man. I mean, I was looking at the Mexican national team, and this was the Uzbek B side. This was that song that you really like from that group that you didn't think that they ever recorded, and it ends up on the backside of a 45, and you go, wow. Uzbek's B team on a gorgeous free kick at 90+2 ties Mexico 3-3. What is going on?
Like, I'm going to go ahead and tie this, and I'll do my best to maybe move on from one to another. And it goes like this, right? We have expectations for our national teams, depending on who you are, where you're from, and there are realities on the other end. So I'm going to try to tie in CONMEBOL and what you just said about Mexico, right? Okay. Colombia is a team that, for me, is being way too complacent with mediocrity. They are a team with a rich history. They're one of the biggest producers of talent in South America, sending players all over the world. And yet here we are, beating Venezuela 1-0 with very poor soccer. There's no spark, no magic. You play a aged out, begging for a generational change Chile with Gary Medel looking like I did during the media game, right? Stomach out, all that. He's there. Arturo Vidal comes off, I believe, like in a ambulance because I mean, the guys were exhausted. This is a bad, poor version of Chile, and yet Colombia was unable to win that game. They almost lose it. So Colombians are starting to ask more of their national team with the talent that is there. Colombia, maybe they don't have as many big names as they used to before, but Luis Diaz is still a top player, right? He plays in Europe, plays in a top European team. He's talented. There's a whole bunch of youth players. In Mexico, moving on to that, now they have their own history. They have their own expectations, but the reality is that there isn't a lot of talent right now. You don't see that generational change, and I think it's starting to catch up to them. The fact that their youth system and the pipeline isn't really there, and now they're tying against a B squad of a team that they were supposed to just demolish. If you really look at Mexican media before this game, they call it un partido molero. You know, whenever you get a team that you're just going to smack around, Appalachian State type, right? You're just going to beat them down, right? That you just get that team that you're just going to beat them down, give you confidence, and you draw 3-3. This is ridiculous. I thought that there were several players like Sepulveda that should never be called back. There's a lack of a system. Raul Jimenez, yes, he scores, but he's not the Raul of old. So I just think that Mexico is in a rut, and they have to claw their way out of it because it's no longer, you don't have the excuse of it's about the coach. It's about the Argentine coach like Tata or the Colombian coach like Osorio. Now you got your guy. This is the guy that you wanted, and still there's issues, and still you can't get results. So I just think that Mexico's in some deep, deep problems.
I thought you were going to use a different word other than problems that was going to that might earn us our explicit rating for the day, which would have been fine. I mean, that's perfectly good.
No, I tried not to. Not in your show.
Well, I mean, hey, Jarrett is definitely the one that likes to do the explicit rating. Before we get into red light, yellow light, green light, and the finish, I got to hit a button.
Uh-oh.
News out of Sporting Kansas City. Alan Pulido has signed a new DP contract through 2026. So
wow.
Alan Pulido staying at Sporting Kansas City for the foreseeable future. Press conference today at 3:30 Eastern time, so 12:30 your time. Alan Pulido and Peter Vermes are going to have a press conference. Pulido staying through at least 2026, or at least the asset will be under control through 2026. Anything else internationally on your mind before we get into Major League Soccer?
No, just to finish off on CONMEBOL, it's interesting. Like I say, if I had to break it down, Colombia, they earn points, but with very little soccer. Chile needs new players. I mean, you cannot continue to have this. You're going to get nowhere in South America with this team. They need some really, really bad new players. Ecuador looked pretty good, looked decent. Peru, they lose in the last minute against Brazil. People are wrongfully blaming Raul Ruiz for not covering the near post on a play where Luis Abram, the Atlanta United player, was in charge of Marquinhos. He gets beat, and he's nowhere to be seen in the goal. So that's been interesting. If you guys get a chance to go into Pulso Sports and look at Brian Smetzer's response to me asking him, because the Peruvian coach, it was funny enough that he said that Raul was put in that near post because he defends that with his club. I've never seen Raul defend the near post. So I asked Brian Smetzer directly, and he's like, man, we've never done that. So that's caught a lot of traction in Peruvian media. So very interesting. And check it out. It's a funny story. But Peru still, I thought that they played well into the point of that they lost, but they were balanced. They were organized. They gave Brazil some issues. So as always, love CONMEBOL. Uruguay, they lose against Ecuador. Facundo Torres gets laid out by the goalkeeper. Don't know how that's not a PK. I'm talking about the guy just tackled Facundo Torres. But that's just CONMEBOL. Gets played differently when it comes to physicality.
True. So let's see. So let's play. So red light would be Mexico.
Oh yeah.
Who's your yellow light internationally after this window?
Yellow light. Let's give it to Colombia. Very mid, very vanilla, very uninspiring, to be quite honest. But there's pieces. Carrascal was interesting. Sinisterra. So let's give them the yellow because they were able to get some points. Green, as always, Argentina. They take care of business. They do what they're supposed to do. Play in Bolivia, which is not easy to do. They still win 3-0. They own it. So, yeah.
All right. So let's get into the action this weekend in Major League Soccer. Hudson River, Atlanta United hosting 71,000 of their closest friends as Lionel Messi and his friends come to town. Orlando City, Columbus, Philly and Cincy. Looking at the mirror, it's like the Spider-Man meme where they're looking at each other and pointing. You've got FC Dallas and Seattle. Houston in all caps is a very, very sneaky one at 8:30. The Revs escaping all of the madness, going to take on the Rabid Prairie Dogs. El Tráfico, San Jose RSL, Austin and the Timbers. What's on your mind with this weekend? A lot of heavy-duty stuff.
A lot of heavy-duty, a lot of great games, right? But we got to start with Atlanta, Miami. I'm still not sure if Messi's going to play this game. He obviously didn't play for the Argentine national team. He did have, obviously, that scare where he gets pulled off while playing for Argentina in that first game. They called it precautionary. He just felt something, a little tightness. I don't know if he'll play against Atlanta, but you still get El Tata coming to your stadium. Is going to be interesting. Atlanta United needs the points. Miami needs the points. Miami has proven that they can win and be hard to beat with those co-estelar players, right? Those rotating pieces. You still get Sergio Busquets. You still get Alba. It'll be interesting to see Joseph Martinez wanting to, I'm sure, score in Atlanta. So that's a big one for me. The Houston St. Louis, like you said, I think that's a sneaky one. Houston is in our green light category these days. They look so good. I voted for Hector Herrera as the best player of last month. I thought he deserved it. In St. Louis, right? They're just doing it right. They get Klaus back. They won't have Sam for this one, but Niko will probably play right next to Klaus if that's what they need. So it's going to be a good one. That one I'll be watching for sure. Can Houston maintain that sort of play, and can they not just lay off the throttle and keep intense, keep having Cole Carrasquilla at this type of level? So it'll be interesting to see. Philadelphia, Cincinnati, always interesting, always important. Two top teams. Obviously, the Shield, the Rays are pointing at each other 100%. And Dallas, Seattle is another one that could be interesting, right? Seattle, Raul Ruiz is arriving today to Seattle. He's going to train with the team, and then we'll fly back to Dallas. We asked Brian, why didn't he just meet you guys in Dallas if he's coming from Peru? He just said that's the way the air plane tickets were kind of placed beforehand. So it'll be interesting how that plays out. Seattle is still not out of the grid. I mean, they're second in the West because of what LAFC hasn't done, because of what other teams haven't done. But that doesn't mean that they kind of, I don't know if they deserve to be at second place, to be honest, but they've been able to hold on. So this game against Dallas is going to be very important when it comes to that Western Conference last push for the playoffs.
All right. Hit the promo for me. What's going on with the Soccer Bar and Pulso Sports?
All right. Like I mentioned, it's really, really interesting to hear Craig Weibel talk about this new young player in Stuart Hawkins, center back, 17-year-old, the first and only homegrown center back that has been added to the team in its history. Very interesting. We also talked to the young player. He talks about he just got his license. His dad barely trusts him with the car. And here he is, signed up to a first-team contract. So I love those stories. I think those are fun to hear a kid talk about that experience. And in Soccer Bar is going to be at 1 p.m. Pacific. We'll talk about all of this. I'm sure we'll get into all the same stories that you heard here, but in Spanish with John Rojas, with Diego Cora. We're going to have a special guest as well, so it's going to be a good one.
All right. El Rolo and W on the Twitters, Thursdays with Niko. As always, it's fantastic to have Niko come in to give the Pacific perspective on stuff. And so, Niko, since you are here and we are at the end of yet another program, you, sir, get to send us home.
All righty, everybody have a good day. Make sure that you guys follow my man here, SDH, the best in the business. Really appreciate it, guys. Have fun. Watch these MLS games. It'll be a good one.
9 o'clock tomorrow morning, Kit Lefersky will be joining us from Scotland to talk about stuff going on with the Celtic women's side, Beyond Goals Mentoring Weekend Whip Around, and Nico's going to enjoy his coffee. Be safe. We'll be back at it again in 22 hours or a little less. Bye.